We have the most fabulous advocate for community pharmacy, absolutely getting involved in primary care, and it's been our pleasure as a set of LPCs across the southwest to work with Marina for the last few months. So, Marina, how are you doing? Are you ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll. Oh, yeah, I do want that, please. But I just wanted to give a few facts and figures before before I kicked off, if that's okay. Because some
Welcome
of
to Marina.
what Nick has said has rung true. So, from a Somerset perspective, we've got 25% of GPs that will retire in the next 5 years. Across the southwest, we had 420 GP surgeries at this time last year. Today we have 380 GP surgeries. 40 surgeries have merged within the last 12 months with each other. So that's not closures, that's mergers, which tells you something about the workforce and workload issues that exist within general practice. And one of the things I found really interesting over the last 12 months is that when I sit with the LPCs and talk about pharmacy, and I chair the pharmacy committee as well for NHS England South West, I could be sat in a room of GPs or a room of pharmacists most of the time when I'm hearing about some of the pressures and some of the difficulties in terms of workforce and just generally opening the business for that day and some of the issues that crop up as a result of that, really. And the other thing I just wanted to cover off, and I am going to say it up front before I get into the detail, just following on from flu, is wouldn't it be great, pharmacy and GPs, to push back to the Commissioner and say, actually the way you've commissioned flu isn't right, we should be commissioning a population-based service that incentivises us to deliver the maximum output to the population. So would be really appreciative of having some pushback from the LPCs and the LMCs in terms of how we might do it better, because I think there definitely is a different approach and you shouldn't be frightened of testing us on our approach to that. Okay, so I'm going to get that out of the way up front and then move in. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our Southwest wide programme, which is the Sustainability and Transformation of General Practice programme, which has sort of been predicated on the GP forward view. And there's just one thing I want to make clear at the start, that whilst I might use the term GP forward view, this does not denote GP as the individual. This is talking about wider general practice. And I think that's really important, that people don't see this policy as being about a group of individuals, but about a wider primary care. Okay. So I'm going to skip through some of these things. A bit about the case for change as well, for anybody that doesn't know. In terms of our general practice, we are significantly higher in terms of quality, in terms of our CQC measures, than anywhere else in the country. We have 11 times the number of outstanding practices to the rest of the country. So whilst we do have some significant challenges, we still have some, a really good and vibrant primary care. But we have some significant issues that we need to tackle, and these are just the bottom around quality, population, workforce, and cost. We do have some significant financial issues in the southwest as well in terms of our acute sector. But also, one of the things that's really important about why we need such a strong, prosperous primary care is that some of the areas of the southwest, particularly areas of Somerset as well as Cornwall and Devon, are so remote that the community is so dependent on its primary care infrastructure, because travelling 20 miles to the hospital, if that's your nearest service, isn't going to bring you what you need, especially in some of your later years in life. So it's really critical that our population is centred on a strong primary and community infrastructure. We know what we're trying to solve, and I think some of the opportunities which I'll pick up through this relate to quality, technology, sustaining workforce, new ways of working, and other colleagues have touched on some of these things as well, so maybe some of this will just reinforce it for you. But the major policy that we issued at NHS England in April predicated around 5 key areas, and a couple of the ones that are most important to pharmacy colleagues centre on the workforce. And there is a point to make that a lot of people talk about picking up the pharmacist and just moving them into general practice. There is the other route here, which is what can be moved out of general practice onto the high street. So we know through things like the 10 high impact actions in general practice that we've seen areas of the country doing shared care arrangements with GP practices around things like drug clinics, around methotrexate and anticoagulation monitoring. That it doesn't, that in some areas, whilst there is capacity in GP premises, there isn't always. So there has to be an opportunity to throw things up in the air a little bit. Another thing that I just wanted to touch on, of the about 500 million primary care money that I'm responsible for, we spend 60 million on primary care buildings. And so the point that Nick made earlier about it'd be quite nice if some people came into my building, there are some opportunities to be had in terms of efficiencies and at scale by just not continuing to do everything the same, and that's the opportunity for how we might invest in some of the new stuff people want to do by actually rationalising some of the buildings and empty space that we've got. So just a point to that, and that very much comes in practice infrastructure. Workload that I'm going to get into quite significantly. A number of GPs say to me, and I know from the emails that I get at 12 o'clock at night from GPs doing their actual office job when they've finished the day job, if you know what I mean. And they're speaking to me a lot about the prevalence of mental health, so anxiety and depression as a result of long-term conditions that's turning into a lot of the day job. Some of the care home work that they're now very much getting involved in, some of the more complex. So we hear strategy around freeing up GPs to do 30-minute appointments with the most needy, and I think Nick's already touched on some of what that might create. So yes, it might create additional capacity from elsewhere in the system, but would that be a really vibrant role for a GP? I would suggest not. So there is something about how we develop a portfolio workforce. One of the things we're really keen on is finding a way of indemnifying professionals so that they can work holistically across the system. So if we take, for example, the South Somerset Vanguard, they're very much appointing GPs to do a bit of time in general practice and a bit of time in long-term condition clinics and other clinics with consultants. And I think that's absolutely the opportunity for pharmacy as well, about actually how can a bit of time be done within the community infrastructure, but then a rotational time within a system, so that you actually get to work cross-sector within an area really. And we need to find a way of making that happen, because one of the practices in South Gloss that's a clinical pharmacist in general practice pilot, there's 6 practices together that bidded for it, but it's caused some issues around indemnifying, because you've got to be appointed by one organisation and the GPs have to supervise you, and some of that hasn't realised the role to its maximum potential. So nationally we are pushing on this indemnity issue, not just for GPs but for pharmacists and other healthcare practitioners, to be able to undertake some of these wider roles across the system really. And care redesign, the most important one, because if we're not filling GP training places in places like Somerset, and we've got a significant retirement looming, that tells me that only a new model of care will do in some areas of the country. That is what we're talking about. And I spend most of my life at the moment responding to MP letters from patients saying I can't get an appointment with my GP, and I think there has to be something here about was it right that the patient absolutely needed to see the GP, and was there somebody in a wider primary care team that could have done that interaction? And so I'm very much writing back to these letters now saying, if you want us to promise that we can sustain the current system in its current form, it would be wrong of me to make those commitments, because we can't. And so for me, that throws up the big opportunity about what we can do differently. Okay, so the approach we're taking is that the GP forward view and primary care in general, in the 12 years I've been working in primary care, has never had such a portfolio. Never ever have I been invited to talk to chief executives about the role of pharmacy and general practice before, ever, and so that tells you where we are with primary care being seen as front and centre in all of, not only STP planning, but Simon Stevens' recent meetings with the STP footprints. One of his major criticisms of the STP footprints in the Southwest was there wasn't a strong enough primary care presence in there, and that's from the right at the top of the office. So you know, that saying about when are we going to look to change things? If not now, then when? There's never going to be a better case for change, okay? And my job and my colleagues at NHS England and our wider primary care my wider primary care colleagues' jobs is to find a way of making that happen. So on a few of the slides tonight, I've seen how do we do this, and I think that's where I come in really, because there are numerous opportunities in terms of how we can do this. So you can see on this slide here that we've got a programme board that I'm going to go into in a minute, and clearly Somerset sits in this bit. We have 5 of the 6 arm's length bodies sat within our programme board, so that is NHS England, CQC, NHS Improvement, it's Health Education England, it's the Allied Health Science Networks, alongside LMCs, LPCs, the community chief execs, and we meet once a month with the sole aim of sustaining and transforming primary care. And we do have colleagues such as David Beerman and Michael who are also at that table with us. And it's been such a joy. The first meeting that we had over 30 people attend, and a colleague said to me, Marina, do you not think our programme board's too big? And I said, well, the fact that all of these people want to come and talk about primary care and how we transform it, I think signals where we're up to. So no, I don't think it's too big. I think a few years ago we'd have had 5 or 6 people there. I think again it shows you that the tide has changed around this. And our responsible officers are 2 of the most senior people within NHS England, again, which tells you where we're up to within the place of primary care within our overall STP structure. That's for you to look at your own leisure, but that is the membership, so you can see who's joining us in our mission, really. So where does this fit for pharmacists in terms of a future model? People may have seen, and if you haven't, it's one to look at, the new multi-community provider framework contract that's out there. I will send it to Michael, and if you want to include it as a link. This was what was once previously referred to as a new GP contract. It's not a new GP contract, it's a community-based contract. And the idea of this is that it will serve populations from 30,000 and more, and it will be the coming together of providers for the delivery of a population-based healthcare system. So what interventions would it be right to deliver to this population as provider groupings? And so some of the issues that we mentioned earlier, and I know we keep coming back to flu, but in an MCP world, the flu thing wouldn't happen, because in an MCP world, the commissioner would say, here's your target for flu, the money would go in one direction, and then you would incentivise whoever was best in the system to deliver their output for the patients, wouldn't there? It wouldn't be all of these multiple contracts. And so it's very much based on achieving population-based coverage and improvements in overall health outcome. That is a massive opportunity, and we'll be launching in October an application process for local areas to come forward who want to be MCPs, and to make it very clear as well that in order to bid for an MCP, it has to include general practice, community services, community pharmacy, mental health, and some elements of social work. So community pharmacy is mentioned within that framework in terms of a professional body as well. We are in the process of redesigning a minor ailment scheme, so I think a nod to the push locally. I'm a real fan of minor ailments in the sense that it is one of the bits of the system that has massive opportunity to increase sustainability and resilience within a wider general practice. There is a scheme in Somerset, but it's a very limited scheme, and when we did plan at NHS England, I'll be honest about this, to decommission this at the 31st of March, it tells you something when the letters that I got were so heated were from GPs, they weren't from pharmacists, they were from the GPs saying, actually, this is going to create pressure on my system at a time where we most need not to have that pressure. So I think that tells you how highly regarded that service is with amongst GPs. So we are in the process of working with LMCs and CCG meds management leads and things to look at a redesigned service, but something that is based on delivering up freeing of appointments, so not just the head lice and the paracetamol and stuff, I mean genuinely freeing up appointments, and we are looking at a tiered system that also enables us to use the skills of the pharmacists who are trained prescribers, because there absolutely has to be an incentive really in training yourself up to some of these heightened skill sets to be able to do more. So we are looking at how we capitalise on using some of that additional skill set within a wider health system. And also very much having the GPs say these are some of the things that tie up general practice that we know the pharmacy could do really well and need not darken our doors really. So any ideas you've got around that, Michael is your man, don't lose the opportunity. The other thing I should say as well is that because we are so keen to have pharmacy around the table, NHS England, like we have done for the GP community, have funded a day of LPC time for each of the STP footprints to have people like Michael come along to meetings, but also Michael has got another job to do around there, which is to engage the pharmacy community in the plans. So if there are things you want to know or don't know about, I'm putting him on the spot now and saying he's your man to make sure that we do the bilateral conversation, which is the top down and the bottom up piece.
On the spot.
Yeah. But I think that's really critical. You know, he's the voice at the table along with other, you know, our community provider chief execs and things, and that opportunity has to be capitalised on. The sustainability and delivery programme and how he contributes, so I've sort of covered that bit off, but the STPs, this number 4, is really key because there's been a lot of talk tonight about what the opportunity is for community pharmacy. The commissioner in me says there is no additional money. So in order to fund the new stuff, we have to find a way of paying for it from the existing budgets. And so the trick there is, what would I need to believe to be true about primary care in general? So I mean this, I mean it more wider than community pharmacy, I mean general practice, etc. as well. What would I need to be believed to be true to start making different commissioning decisions about the way a wider health system spent its money? Because at the moment in the Southwest we spend 5 billion on health, but around 800 million on primary care. So what do I need to believe to be true about the resilience, sustainability and ability within primary care to start saying, actually, in order to rebalance the health system, we need to move services out, but who's going to be on the hook for receiving those services? You know, the work has to go somewhere, and whilst I appreciate we are banking on a significant amount of work going into self-care and health coaches and stuff, that's going to be a piece of work over time, isn't it? We've got a big behavioural piece to do with the population first, around expectations and about how they manage their own health and well-being as well. And these things aren't achieved overnight, are they? So there is something about how quick we can do some of this. And the big thing for me that I've loved about working in the Southwest is that the energy that exists down here for doing things and doing different things I've never seen anywhere else before in primary care. And so that notion of pushing on an open door that Michael used earlier is so true. So I want you to challenge me where there are things that you think we could be doing differently, or community pharmacy could be doing differently. But what I also want you to do in challenging me is to challenge yourselves and say, actually, how are we going to demonstrate to a commissioner that this is a good thing to do? Because that has to be the answer to the question. So as a result of me commissioning a new minor ailment scheme, what is that going to free up in the system? And I'm not necessarily just talking about cashable savings. So if we do this, we'll save millions. I'm talking about savings by way of appointments and things so that other work can be done during that time, okay? That's the challenge I think I would put out there, that there's so much stuff that's really great to do and we absolutely want to support it, but we have to find a way of doing it within current cost envelopes, and that's why the role of people like Michael in pushing to the STP footprints and saying, actually, if you've got a £50 million problem, some of that problem can be worked through by us designing a new model that's predicated on X, Y and Z, and so we need to get a bit more savvy in the way that we do things, because only these true business cases now will stack up because of some of the financial challenges that we're all facing. So it not only does it have to be great for patients and outcomes, it also has to be great for the system as well. Am I okay to stop? there, 'cause I've
You
probably
can
gone on a
stop
little. I
or
haven't
you can
even.
continue.
I haven't even. I'm not sure whether how. A final thing on this one. I think this is really important. This is the 4 work streams of the programme that I talked to you about. This is the key work we are going to be doing as a programme board over the next 12 months. And you can see that this one is one of the highest ones on our list to crack. What I will say, and I'll leave it there, is that the problems that we face now are so great that they will not be solved by reinforcing these existing contractual silos. So we need to find a new way of delivering the services that are based on populations and that incentivise, like I said, population-based performance and outcomes, not individual sectors or providers within the system in the way that it's done right now. Okay.